It is starting now. In a minute, we should get a notification. Now. In a minute, we should get a notification. Okay, you guys are all set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Calling the meeting of the Southborough Cable Television Committee to order. Read the following notification. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough Cable TV Committee will be conducted by remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and our parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay, the first order of business is the approval of the minutes of September 21, which were circulated to the committee in advance of the meeting. Any comments, corrections, changes by anyone? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Kathy?
Yes.
Will?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, the minutes are approved. Thank you, and thank you, Will, for doing those. The next item on the agenda are the Charter Form 500s that the committee has seen. These were deemed or labeled by Mr. Marr as confidential. So I don't have an intention of discussing them at the meeting. And unless anyone feels the need to, I would move on to the agenda. I would just note for the record that they were received. Any objection to that?
No.
Will?
No.
Okay. Let me bring you up to date on what has transpired since our meeting of September 21st. Nothing. At least, and I'll turn it over to Bill, but I have not heard any information of any kind regarding the license. So Bill, you had any communication with John Marr or received anything from him? And Bill, you are muted.
Yeah. All right. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I exchanged emails with John on Monday. I spoke to him by phone on Monday or Tuesday. The issues that we still have outstanding are two. One of them is the language for the live feeds. And we've got two alternatives that Charter says they will accept. There's a 5.2.3 version, which is like the Verizon language in our license. which he basically said he would accept with a few exceptions. And he said, we're agreeable to that. Or there is the third, which was kind of our suggestion, or there's the 13.4 language that he edited, which has got in it the parts we don't like about having it pass through and without reference to pass through regardless of whether the FCC 621 order remains intact or not. So we've got those two variations. He says he'll accept the 5.2.3 version that we proposed to him. The issue from our last meeting was what did exactly Verizon agree to? Do we already have feeder lines constructed from those two sites, and are we just getting the two encoders, or did Verizon undertake in this or the prior license to build those? That was the issue. So that's the first thing. Second thing is the disagreement about language for the reports in section 13.3. They want to have the reports that they produce to us sent electronically or have us visit their office. We say we want you to make them, we want you to deliver them to us if you're going to require that we deliver our report to you. So we're at a deadlock. They will agree that the reports that they require from us will be only upon request. And they're agreeable to put that language in. So I tried to come up with some kind of compromise with John, and I can't find any common ground. It's either one version or the other. That's where we are.
Do they offer any rationale why one standard applies to the town and another one applies to charter?
The rationale, I think they do. The rationale is that if they respond to our request, for example, for strand maps, these are voluminous. This isn't a single piece of paper. Strand maps are large books like architectural drawings, and they're about the size of a desk. They may be able to produce them electronically. They may not. I don't know. With charter, they probably can't. But his response is, your request to us for documents is much more voluminous than our request to you. So we are not going to pick up all our strand maps and all our reports and all our papers and all the voluminous documents and put them in a truck and go over and let you look at them. That's why we ask you to come to our place of business. On the other hand, he says, we're asking you for one piece of paper. So why should we go to your place to look at one piece of paper? Just send it to us. That's his answer.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I hadn't focused on the strand map piece of that. And I don't know, frankly, why we would ever need or want strand maps. And Bill, you're much more knowledgeable than I. What would be a reason why an issuing authority would want to see strand maps?
What if Verizon leaves?
I think the reason we would want to look at a strand map, the reasons that municipalities usually do are to see whether the cable company is in compliance with the build-out requirements. So they would show whether, for example, on any particular mile of road, there are X number of houses per mile, and therefore it ought to be cabled, or whether they're not there.
Okay, but
Barry?
Yeah.
I was just thinking, wouldn't the strand map give us an indication as to how well Charter could, or how extensively Charter could step up to take over if Verizon should decide to leave?
Well, but I mean, that's not, either they can or they can't. I'm not sure how, because we're not going to decide anything. If Verizon leaves, then that just means those customers are then in the market looking for another provider, and either Charter wants that business, in which case they do what they need to do, or they don't want that business. We can't force them to take it.
Okay. one other question would be, you know, Sam is going to be spending his $3,800 a year, right? I have to believe that they've probably got expenses that are going to recur every year for the next 5 years, in which case the report's going to be pretty easy. It's just going to be, we spent the same as we did last year. We could even file all 5 reports today if necessary.
Well, it's going to be even easier than that again. And we talked about this last meeting because the report is from the town. It's not from Sam. So the town's just going to say, we received 3,800 and we wrote a check to Sam for 3,800.
Yeah.
So it's one piece of paper for 5 years. Just file all 5 years, we're done.
Well, you don't want to file all 5 years because
No.
you know you're not sure about year 4 and 5. But yeah, it's probably going to be the same every year. And I don't even, quite frankly, I mean, some things that John says, I believe. Some things I'm dubious of. I believe him when he says nobody's ever going to ask for these. I've never heard of Charter or anybody asking for these reports. And you sometimes see them in other licenses too, and nobody ever gets a request. So I tend to believe him when he says, it's me who would make the request and I don't plan on doing it. I just have to put it in. Corporate wants that in there. So I have a feeling that you may never even have to file one. But if you do, it's just a simple piece of paper. So, you know, I think he's got a point, to tell you the truth, with the comparable difference between one piece of paper and voluminous pages on the other side. I think he's got a point.
Okay, let's put this on the back burner for a minute because we've got Caitlin Willis and Warren Pally from SAM, and they only have limited availability, and I want to get them involved in the discussion on the video feeds. So thank you, Ryan, for putting you through. Hi, Caitlin.
Hello.
And
I'm here.
With us.
Hi, Warren.
Yep. There we
Hi,
go.
Warren.
Hi,
Thank you.
folks.
Thanks, both of you, for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So, as I don't know if you heard what Bill was discussing before we got into the production of documents piece about the 2 different alternatives Charter is offering with regard to live feeds. So, Bill, why don't you go through those?
Wow.
Again?
Certainly. The first alternative is the one that we wanted, and that is they will construct, but we'll have to pay for the construction of live feeds. That is, the cost will be passed through to subscribers. Whatever the cost is, they'll do it, but we'll pay for it. And in addition to that, we wanted language in the section that said, you'll only pass that cost through as long as the FCC order, the so-called 621 order, which says in-kind costs may be passed through. You'll only have to, we'll only have to pay for that as long as that order is in existence. The idea being, we hope, maybe after the next election, somebody's going to pull that thing and go back to the way it was and we wouldn't have to do it. Well, Charter understands where we're going with that, and they won't agree to limit it to the FCC order only. They say, we would have the right to pass that cost through anyway, even if the FCC didn't tell us to. So we want to exercise that right. We won't agree to roll the dice and say, oops, if the FCC order is gone, we don't have to pay for it. So their proposal is, yeah, we'll build it. We're going to pass the cost through. You guys got to pay for it. That's one alternative. The other one
Bill,
is,
can I interrupt just to
Sure.
say that alternative does allow us to get an estimate beforehand as to how much that
Yes.
cost is going to be.
Great.
yes. The other alternative was, we said, okay, look, we've got a provision in the Verizon license under which Verizon gave us encoders for those lines. It's not clear from the Verizon language. It does not appear that Verizon agreed to build those lines in the current license, in the last license. That is the one that they just got last fall. They simply say, in order to maintain the connectivity between those places, we will give you 2 encoders for the 2 feed lines. So the question that we had was, the Verizon language does not appear to obligate anybody to construct feed lines. So the question we had at the last meeting was, were those feed lines constructed at an earlier date by Verizon? Do they exist?
From the new locations, you're talking about the library and the public safety
Yes.
building?
Yes,
I do
yes.
not know that. We didn't, I mean, there's nothing set up from previous SAM stuff, but the town might have done something, I'm not sure.
So, I mean, the reason this is important is that the charter will agree to do anything Verizon has agreed to do. But there's no obligation to Verizon to do that in the most recently granted license. So you know, we understand that you would like these live feed lines constructed. If we have charter do it, that may mean that only the charter is the only one that's done it, and that they don't exist for the Verizon subscribers. Is that a possibility? That they're not there at all? That there's no Verizon line?
I don't know. This is the first time Southwest Media proposed it. And like when we were setting up the SAM studio at Trottier, we talked with Verizon and Charter, and they weren't sure. They ended up doing a trench, and SAM paid for that. So I expected that it would have worked out this way anyways. But I'm not sure. And I don't know if they know exactly what they would have to do.
Okay. And parenthetically.
Question, Barry. What kind of line are these? Are they IP kind of lines, or are they something special? Coax?
So I don't know what they're proposing to do for these new feeds.
Well,
What do we currently have?
If we have an encoder that encodes video to IP, don't we need an IP line to get back to you guys?
And that is what we have. Let me see if I can pull up. It'll take me a second to find it.
While you're doing that, so if you get the encoders, seems to me then you have two ways to go. You can go to, well, you could have Charter, you could pay Charter to put in the lines and pay Verizon to put in the lines. Or as we've sort of been talking offline, if I understand it, you could use the town's fiber to accomplish the same thing.
Yes.
Barry, there's one perhaps fly in that ointment, which is that the town's fiber, I don't know if it actually connects to the schools. I mean, that would be a question for Tom LaFlamme.
Yeah, he proposed that, I believe, but that's another thing. I'm not sure, but Sam would be open to doing that. We would just need to have an agreement between the town and Sam on how that's maintained and any detail about that.
Right, seems to me it becomes a cost issue between using Charter and Verizon lines or using the town's fiber line.
Yes, exactly.
For Sam, anyway, it's solely a cost issue, I would think. I mean, there may be some technological reason I don't understand, but am I right about that from your perspective? It's just a matter, they both accomplish the same thing. It's just a matter of which one's going to cost you the least to run and maintain.
Yes.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, isn't the best option for Sam to have Charter provide the two encoders and be able to get an estimate from Charter on what they're going to charge you to put in the lines and maintain them?
Yes, I believe so. And I'm looking through the notes that Verizon originally had auxiliary feed equipment, and then they were cutting over to SDI encoders on the network.
Okay.
So it sounds like, and I don't know about the library, they could have something set up. This was never talked about before.
Do you have any idea how much these encoders cost?
It depends on what model. I mean, I think $3,000 was thrown out there, and I don't know. I would have to be given some more information about it, and then I would just look it up.
Yeah, I was looking online and I saw prices like 2,000 to 3,000 for one. So I don't know if 3,000 would be enough for two. If you went with sort of the bargain basement, you know, probably yes, it would be enough.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that would be, you know, good enough for you. That would be the question.
I'm sure that number is negotiable with Charter, to tell you the truth. If you think that 4,000 or 4,500 is, or 5,000, I'll bet they'd do it to get this deal done.
Sure.
But I guess I need, you know, some kind of foundation to go back to John and say, John, 3,000 isn't enough. Here's a, you know, an XP 4212 that's going to cost us 2,500. So give us two of those. It's 5,000. You know, I need something to support that.
So did you say that Verizon has provided encoders?
Are you asking me, or?
Well, either you or, yeah.
So I'm not, see, we had old equipment too from the original location that were moved. So we ended up just paying for the actual like lines to be connected from the Sam studio up to the end of this driveway. But I mean, I can pull up to see. But other access stations I've worked at, we've always had to pay for the connections.
Okay. But my only thought was, if Verizon has provided you with encoders, you could then price what that model is and see.
Oh, I see what you mean. Sure. I can look up.
Because then we could go back to Charter and say, we're just asking you to match what Verizon has done.
Yeah. I bet they'd do it. As long as we can prove it.
Mm-hmm.
So Bill, while she's looking, if Sam went to Charter and said, okay, got the encoders, we now want you to put in the feeds, would the cost of that be a direct charge to Sam or an offset of the 5%?
Well, I suspect it could be either. I suspect we could, if we have a preference, Charter would honor that.
Okay. At the end of the day, I guess it probably doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So we were only charged for the labor, the engineer, wires, administrative costs, contractor costs. There's no equipment listed in the Verizon, at least for our first, for the Trotter connection.
Okay.
What year was that, Caitlin?
2016.
Okay.
And I'm going to see if Charter did that, but I also know that Charter did things a little differently, and we worked closer with the actual engineers, where the Verizon was just a different process. And it was the engineer, the person that like installed the equipment was also the person that I would call if the station went down or we had any issues. And I think they even gave us older equipment.
Caitlin?
Yes.
What does that particular line actually allow you to do? Is that for streaming video from the townhouse or what?
So, yes, because, but there's a process. It goes to the Verizon head end before it comes to us. There's like a hub.
Right. So do you happen to know, the wires that were put in, where did they go from to? Were they outside wires or were they inside wires? Where did they go?
They were in a trench and then trench up to the end of the driveway. And I believe it was outside.
Driveway of which building?
Sorry, Trottier, where the station is, just that back driveway.
Okay.
So it wasn't a long distance.
Okay, I put a message into Tom LaFlamme, but I don't think we'll probably hear from him. But, you know, there's a lot of different possibilities. I mean, if we paid for that particular trench, then what that tells me is that there's an internet connection between the townhouse and Sam Studios.
Mm-hmm.
And that I don't see any reason why that couldn't be reused. However, you know, that would certainly be something we'd want to check with Tom LaFlamme and see what he says about that. And what, you know, now that we've put in links from the senior center and the public safety building and the library all to the townhouse, you know, I think there's a lot of possibilities now in terms of going further back to Sam.
Okay, so I guess the distinction between what Verizon has agreed to and what Charter is suggesting, Verizon is giving you the encoders, at least according to the license, they're giving you the encoders, but the encoders continue to belong to Verizon. And what Charter is proposing is, we don't want to own them. We'll give you the money, you buy them, and they're yours. If they break down, your problem.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill, do you know if Charter is open to providing the Charter to the encoders rather than giving the cash?
I don't know, Barry. I can certainly ask, but I haven't even discussed that with them.
Okay, and I don't know what your preference would be. You may want to own it. I don't know. I guess the issue only comes when the equipment fails, and then obviously if you own it, you got to replace it.
And I did just get I found the Charter when they did the installation or the connection at the Sam studio, and it was just from the station to the pole. So, and that's where we had Charter and Verizon work together. So we didn't have to have multiple digging and everything. But there's no equipment listed here. It just says labor costs, pole applications, engineering, and police detail.
Yeah, I mean,
Tom LaFlamme has joined the meeting, from what I understand.
He looks like he's there. I can allow him to talk.
Yeah.
Hi, Tom.
Hello.
Hello.
Will, did you have a question for Tom?
Okay, Tom. What I think we want to end up with is that we'd like to end up with the ability to stream a live video feed from library, public safety building, senior center, town hall, back to Sam Studios. And we've been offered 2 IP encoders, which I assume are used to, translate the video signals into IP streams. And the question I would have is, given that we have put in a town network now, is the SAM site already connected to this town network? If it's not directly connected, I understand there is already a connection from the townhouse to the SAM site that was put in by Verizon or maybe others. So what I'm wondering here is, do we have enough connectivity that if we put encoders in the public safety building and the library, that we would be able to stream from those locations if we wanted to?
So as it stands right now, the SAM equipment is on its own network, so that doesn't touch the town network. There is capacity to potentially use a pair on the fiber, on the private fiber that connects the town buildings to, create basically a sub network if that's the path that's decided. So there is cabling there that in theory could be used. How we do all that connection, that would take some investigation.
Now, so what you're saying is we have the, fiber. Would we have to buy a lot of equipment to go on the ends of that fiber?
That I don't know. That would be, again, up for determination as far as how to extend the network that is already at Townhouse for the SAM connection. Theoretically, it would be separate switches and everything like that on each end. So.
And what do switches run, just out of curiosity?
They run the gamut depending on what we want to get.
Okay.
Okay.
So even if we had the encoders, that doesn't completely solve our issue in terms of being able to stream from the public safety building and the library back to SAM.
That is beyond my expertise. My understanding, though, is that there's also controls that would be required. Otherwise you might have someone sitting in one building and the meeting being in a different building, and whether or not that's feasible. So okay. I don't know how all that setup works.
Who should we talk to actually, get a, sort of a really good view as to what all this would entail? Because this is a point that we're working on in the negotiations for the new contract with Charter. And we want to make certain that if we're going to ask for something, that it's going to be enough that we can actually use it.
Well, but I mean, we're really only talking about the encoders, aren't we? Because the rest of it, I mean, is going to be determined down the line. Sure. In terms of either what Charter is going to charge you, or certainly investigation of what's encompassed in tapping into the town's fiber, and what are the costs involved in all of that. But that sort of goes, at least as I'm thinking about it, outside of what we're going to put in this license. And it seems to me I'm thinking about is, do we want to pick a number after some research, what's a reasonable number, and have them give you the money to buy the encoders? Or do you just want to ask them to provide the encoders, which they may not be willing to do? As Bill says, we haven't broached that subject. But I mean, I'm open to this, but I think the second part of it is a practical question for SAM, sort of after they have the encoders, how do they want to move forward and implement the live feeds? And again, I could be completely wrong, but
I think that's very reasonable, Barry. I just, my only concern would be that if it turns out that it's much too expensive for us to actually use the encoders, then we've asked for something that we actually aren't going to get any benefit out of. But I don't know. I don't have a good feeling for exactly how complicated this would be. And Tom brings up a good point. You have to go through different scenarios to figure out if you have what you really want or need. You also have to put in control, whatever type of controls you need for this. And then there would be you'd want to look at congestion and things like that. So it's not exactly something where you could say it's a slam dunk.
Mm-hmm. No, but that's sort of the direction we've gone with Verizon, where they've agreed to provide encoders. And so I guess if it's not encoders that we need, if it's some other piece of equipment, I mean, I think what they're proposing is to give you cash, $3,000. So if you decide that we don't need to spend that on decoders, we need encoders, we need to spend it on some other piece of equipment, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do that.
I think that's reasonable.
Caitlin, what are your thoughts?
I could reach out to our production engineer company, HB Communications, that's who helped us install the equipment in the townhouse. They could give us an idea. I think we don't really know. And like what Barry was just saying, if it's not the encoders, we would spend the money on the switch or whatever. We would need to connect it and coordinate that with Tom and Sam's engineers.
So maybe what we do at this point is if we can come up with a figure for encoder, get, again, if Verizon has given us something, what's the cost of that or something that we can then go back to Charter and say, okay, we'll take the deal where you give us the cash, but we need 5,000 or 4,000 or whatever, because this is the encoder we want, something along those lines. Is that something you could come up with?
I mean, I just like what Will said before about like we can look up encoders and it's just a range. So I could do some investigating, but without knowing exactly what they need to do and what they're offering.
Well, what I would say is, let's look at the encoders, online, go to Amazon or maybe Home Depot and, see what, sort of, there's got to be tiers. I mean, there's a low tier that has very little in the way of features. And then there's a middle tier and a top tier. And if we just get a feeling for what the range or, what a reasonable amount of money is in each tier, then we can go to Verizon, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Just give me I bet John won't even blink an eyelash. I just need something to say, John, we're looking for the XP422B. Okay, how much do you need? 5,000. I mean, I need a little something to make it sound official, but I have a feeling, they're anxious to do this deal. We are really close. If it's just going to be another $2,000, he's going to say yes. But I kind of have to have some bona fide, excuse for asking for it. And I'm not going to tell him we don't know what we want.
Caitlin, do you have any encoders already? Did Verizon give you encoders already?
I mean, we must have them already. I'm not at the Sam studio, but I could go check.
Yeah, I mean,
that would be great.
Yeah.
And I can send numbers tonight to you, Barry,
okay,
for our tiered and what we already have.
Okay.
Great. But what I would say is, let's take what Verizon gave you as a floor, maybe go up from there a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that floor is higher than 3,000. Let's hope it is. If it is, that's easy.
I'm sorry, folks. I need to jump off. I need to go deal with an issue that popped up. So.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
And I would say, again, just my viewpoint, if we come up with a number and Charter says yes to that, I just do a deal on that basis, Verizon language, and give them what they want on the documents, on production of the documents. I can see their point on the strand maps, and from the town's perspective, as I said, it's going to be a one-sentence letter that we'd have to produce.
Barry, just one question on that. I mean, I think it's very reasonable, what you said, that it's a one-sentence letter, but I wonder if Charter might not object to that and say, no, what we really want is we want to know what it was really spent on, not that it was just given to Sam.
Well, that's their problem. The
okay.
The license says the issuing authority,
yeah,
and the town is the issuing authority. We don't have the right to require Sam to do much of anything, frankly, but they're a separate legal entity. We can't commit them to anything.
Freedom for Sam, freedom for Sam.
So they may not be happy, but that's what they asked for. And so unless you disagree, Bill. But.
I do not disagree, no. I think it's I don't think you're ever going to get a request. And if you do, according to the license, as Barry said, all you have to do is say the issuing authority report is, we got a check, we gave it to Sam. Very truly yours, your issuing authority. That's all you have to do.
That's fine.
So it's, you know, it's just, it should not stand in the way of a deal.
Okay.
All right, so are we all on the same page that that Caitlin will get us a number? We'll plug that in. It'll be the Verizon language, except that it'll say the charter's going to give whatever that figure is to the town. And we'll agree to their language on the documents.
Yeah.
And we have.
I can speak for Sam, and Sam is in agreement.
Okay, just with respect to Sam, if you could also, if you have a model number from what Verizon gave you, that would also be of great interest.
Absolutely.
I'll get that, and we could hopefully have a meeting. Well, it'd probably be the earliest would be Wednesday, where we could hopefully sign off on. I would think by that time, Bill, we could have the license would be done. In other words, something we could officially vote on.
Yes, it's so close to being done now anyway. Just those two sections have to be tweaked. So yes, that should not be a problem. When would you, if you're going to have the meeting on Wednesday, Barry, would you want it the day before, like Tuesday?
Yeah, that's fine.
Barry, I can't do Wednesday afternoon.
Okay, how about Wednesday morning?
That's trick. My Wednesday is a little on the tricky side this week.
Okay.
What I could do early afternoon on Wednesday, like at 1.
Okay, does that work?
Barry, couldn't we file the agenda today and do it on Tuesday if we wanted?
Theoretically, yes. It would have, well, it would have to be like 4 o'clock. I mean, even it's not going to get posted by 4 o'clock today.
Oh, okay.
So I think Wednesday is the best we can hope for. Does 1 o'clock on Wednesday work for you, Bill? Well,
I've got a 1:15 at Wednesday, so a little earlier maybe, or maybe that's going to be a short one. So probably 2 o'clock. Be okay?
I have until 2:45 on Wednesday.
I'm free from 10:15 to 7 p.m. on Wednesday.
okay. So why don't we set it for 2? I can't imagine it'll take us longer than 45 minutes. The sole agenda item will be reviewing and voting on the proposed license, which I will get to you. Bill will get to me on Tuesday. I'll forward to both of you on Tuesday.
I'll get it to you. As soon as I get the number from Caitlin or you, Barry, I'll give John a call right away. I'll finalize the parts that we are saying we'll agree to. So all we've got to do is put in the number.
Okay. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah, just one thing, Caitlin, if you're going to provide the number, you know, if you do know the model number, see if you can just sort of figure out what that model actually cost and then inflate it, of course.
It's been 3 years, so yes.
That's true. And, you know, I think that they went up rapidly in cost because of all kinds of issues.
Yeah.
I think it was a tariff issue, wasn't it?
Okay.
Sounds like we have a plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Wednesday at 2.
Caitlin and Warren, thank you very much for jumping in.
Thank you all. Thank you for your hard work. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And hopefully we'll get this done next week and have it all finalized, made retroactive to sometime before October 1st, and we'll be good to go.
And Barry, if you need anything else in between now and the meeting, I'm away for a couple of days, but Caitlin will be available, I'm sure.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to reach out to her, right, Caitlin?
Yes. And I'll be messaging you tonight, Barry. So get
Okay,
ready.
I'll sit by my phone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Okay, is there any other business to come before the committee?
No, so we're set for Wednesday then at 2.
Wednesday at 2.
Okay.
Okay.
And I will try to get, well, I will get an agenda out to clerk's office this afternoon, so there won't be any issues. Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, Kathy?
Yes.
Will?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Okay, great.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks.